Hello. So this morning there's a report about a young fellow called Raphael Marshall, and he's produced a 39-page report. He's called a whistleblower, where he alleges that the Foreign Office, at the time when Afghanistan was falling, when Kabul was collapsing, and Dominic Raab was on the beach, that the Foreign Office was disorganized, tardy, and unfair. That this evacuation was unfair. And Raab responds with a dismissive shrug. He says in one report 15,000, in another report 17,000 people were evacuated, and this was something to be very proud of, the biggest evacuation in recent times. And then he goes on to say that Marshall was not a very important person. He was dislocated from operational pressures. Well, not as dislocated, I would say, as somebody who was lying on a beach in Crete, slapping on number 10 and sunning himself. He also says that this man, Raphael Marshall, was a rather junior officer. And again, a rather junior officer. Actually, on the 21st of August, he was the only person doing stuff in the offices, in the Foreign Office, at that time, when there was a crisis on. This is the sort of contempt for the people who do the work by their ultimate boss. And, of course, I expect nothing less from Mr. Raab and his cohort, but it suggests to me there's a sort of mood sweeping around the country that this is the way to treat people who put in the time. It's not surprising that Raphael Marshall has now left the Foreign Office. He says that 5% of the 150,000 people who wrote for help were processed. 5%. That the team, he said, was ill-prepared and ill-equipped, that nobody spoke the languages. There's two major Afghan languages. There should have been people in the Foreign Office who were processing these applications who actually could speak those languages. Everything was done in English. So a majority of those emails must have been automatically excluded because they weren't in a language anyone understood. There was arbitrary decision-making, he said. The IT systems were fairly faulty, or at least the protocols for the use of the IT systems were shambolic. He cites 8 soldiers who were pulled in to help, who were sharing one computer terminal. Raab, he says, was slow to make decisions. Of course he was slow to make decisions. He was on the beach in Crete sunning himself and slapping on number 10. And his defence, he says that he needed the help of Priti Patel. My goodness, that's a hollow defence. Who actually needs the help of Priti Patel? 5,000 unread emails every day. That's the figure that Raphael Marshall cites. And on the specifically between the 21st and the 25th of August. Tom Huguenot, this is the ex-soldier who's now an MP. He wrote about 10 specific cases, and he was told that these were being processed. This was a lie written by the committee to create the illusion of action. Well, we've seen that elsewhere. We've seen that particularly in the Home Office. That's the ministry controlled by this lady whom Raab said he was relying on. She's the person who's showing Raab what to do. My goodness, this is the blind leading the blind. What emails... Marshall says that they received directives that emails had to be processed, but there wasn't time to record the details in these emails. So that could support the lie given out in Parliament that everything was read. Rubbish. On the 21st of August, particularly, when the government knew there was a crisis and should have been drafting people in to support, Marshall says he was the only person in the office tasked with reading 5,000 emails, an impossible task. And in that case, he was doing overtime. He was putting in overtime as a moral duty, and that others were being discouraged from doing the night shift. This is a testimony of appalling moral decay in one of our major offices of state. And I'm utterly ashamed to read this stuff and to hear it on the morning news. And this is the story which is going around the world. It doesn't really matter what other people are going to say later on today when they are also questioned in the committee. It doesn't really matter, actually, what Raab's defence is. Raab, you know, Raab is one of those people who you suddenly say, well, you've got an answer for everything, haven't you? And it's a hollow answer. I must say, I don't like switching on the television and seeing this man staring back at me with these hollow eyes. I would much rather he went back to Crete and slapped on a little bit more number 10 and stayed there. This isn't the sort of man that I feel has the moral capacity to lead in a crisis, and now he's looking after justice. And he's spending all his time, again, defending the indefensible. He's defending allegations of parties in number 10 last Christmas, the ghosts of Christmas past. This is vapid stuff, and it's not the stuff that we should be hearing from a senior minister. Enough is enough. Please follow the channel, ring the bell, and let me know what you think about this sort of thing.